Hello everyone, welcome back to Trek-A-Day. I just finished watching episode 6 of Strange New Worlds Season 2, Lost in Translation. And for anyone new, these are always just my immediate reactions. I literally just turned the episode off about a minute ago. So it is intended for people who have seen the episode, as it's not a full review going over the plot points or anything like that. Alright, so getting into it, this is an episode that really has two story threads that work well together. One of those being the concept of learning of communication, a very unfamiliar form of communication with a very alien form of life, and really bringing to home the concepts of exploring the universe and finding strange new forms of life and learning to communicate and doing the right thing in the end to preserve that life. Mirrors a lot of themes from my favorite episode in the first season, which also very heavily focused on Uhura dealing with communication. So that element I enjoyed a lot and thought worked very well, but just like that first season episode, because I think the exploration of new life should be one of the large focuses of a Star Trek show. And the other thread is dealing with loss. And I thought that was handled well because it has a lot of things carried over from previous episodes. The largest being the loss of Hemmer from last season, who I really enjoyed his character. I was sad to see him go. And dealing with the loss of that character is one of the more specific elements in which it deals with loss, but also speaks to the wider subject of dealing with that issue. And I was happy to see Hemmer back in here in those little moments of hallucination, or that video with Uhura being taught by Hemmer, and really looking in even more detail and getting into why that affected her so much, both her relationship with him and how the loss of Hemmer also brought up some more deaths within her family that she never truly dealt with before. Really thought that was portrayed well, and had one really great moment with Kirk, who was in this episode again. And while, as you watch his videos, I'm not the biggest fan of this version of Kirk, there were a few moments, one moment in particular in Uhura's quarters, where he seemed to more believably fill that role for me, fill those shoes. And they had a couple of moments that really stood out to me that were surprising, and his presence also allowed the feeling of dealing with loss to come up for La'an, as she had her multi-dimensional time-traveling adventure with a different version of him and meeting him. And I'm glad that was a carryover, not just something that was forgotten, which can sometimes happen in more episodic television, that sometimes those the story threads can be just kind of lost in future moments, and so that brought that back. And you did have a little bit with James and Sam, a little bit of that brother relationship and the rivalry between them, but it wasn't as much as I was expecting. I thought that was going to be a larger part of the story, their interaction, just from the teasers, and it wasn't quite as much there. But again, I don't think it was necessarily as needed. The little bits that we got were fine, because it didn't that element wouldn't focus quite as much on the primary focuses of the episode. So overall, it was, I think, a good episode, but just a good one for me. It wasn't one that really blew me away. I don't leave the episode with any very strong emotional reactions one way or the other. It was just a good episode, and sometimes that's enough. It was a good episode that dealt with a couple of things that I like to see explored within Star Trek, dealing with loss instead of just moving on from a loss and forgetting about it, and also the concept of communicating with alien life. One thing that was a little fun nod that I noticed, and one thing that is a little bit worrying that's been kind of trickling through my mind this season, both related to Kirk. One, we have Pike being temporarily promoted to fleet captain, which worked well with Kirk being in this moment saying how he met Pike when he was made fleet captain in TOS. So that's a little nod to where maybe they won't have many more interactions, and that temporary rank of Pike's makes that work. But how temporary is it going to be? And they've been pushing a lot of Kirk, a lot more than I feel like they should in Strange New Worlds, seeing as it's only, this season is only 10 episodes long, and it's very much the idea of Pike and the crew of the Enterprise, those characters before Kirk's time. I feel like you need to let those really shine, and the character of Kirk really shouldn't be in and out all the time. I feel like they're trying to have the audience be a little more familiarized with this interpretation of Kirk and this character, because obviously we know how this series that will come to an end, Pike's story, we know how that's going to come about, but I really feel like they're trying to prepare the audience for the transition to basically just being TOS, and I wonder if that is going to be sooner than anticipated. That's the kind of thing where I felt like that would always be lingering there. The show will go on for however many seasons it goes on, and maybe the last episode is where you see Kirk come aboard and that's the end. But who knows, the way things are going, and obviously with the strikes going on, that season 3 is going to be delayed if it even happens. Even though it's been renewed, that doesn't always mean it's going to happen. I think maybe it will. We'll see how long, what happens with Star Trek in general. A lot to get into there. But is there even a chance that if Strange New Worlds continues on, that it will eventually just kind of morph into TOS with this Kirk? And will we only get maybe 20, 25, 30 episodes of Pike? Kind of a weird thing that I feel like it's going that direction.